being no objection. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the May meeting of the members of the Dormitory Authority. We have with us lots of staff and maybe even guests. Before we go forward, though, I'd like to have the Chief of Staff read off those whom she knows to be present so that we can get started with the agenda. Sarah?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still getting used to that title. We have with us today for board members in the New York City office, our board chair, Al Carney, our vice chair, Jerry Romsky, Beryl Snyder, our secretary, and Wellington Chen. Here in the Albany office, we have Joan Sullivan, Ken Evans, Adrian Swazerski, and Christina Coughlin, and Janice McKinney is representing the board in the Buffalo office. Lisa Gomez is not able to be with us today. For senior staff present, we have Ruben McDaniel, Paul Koopman, Nadine Fontaine, Kim Ellis, Portia Lee. Steve Curra will be joining in the New York City office. Ricardo.
He's here.
Oh,
He's here.
Okay, great. Hi, Steve. And then we have our Alex Sardine is with us, Nairobi Vivez, who will be presenting later today. And for council joining us on the phone, in addition to Charlie Williams, I apologize, I forgot Charlie, who's sitting right next to me, our Managing Director of Executive Direction. I'm taking the long view today. Sorry, Charlie. We have Virginia Wong, Vivian Drohan, Melissa Bennett from Barclay Damon, Karen Kendrick Brown, Chris Reitzel, and Sonny Williams, who will be speaking about the various presentations before us today. And with that, Mr. Chair, I turn it back to you.
I think Seth Bryant is with us as well, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry, I don't see Seth. Hi, Seth. Good morning.
Hey, Seth. Val. All right. I think then we can move into the agenda. We have before us under tab 1 the minutes of the April 12th board meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any proposed corrections, deletions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve minutes?
I'll move.
Thank you, Beryl. Is there a second?
Sure.
Second.
Jerry, second. I'm sorry, Jerry seconded. Thank you both. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? The minutes are approved unanimously. Thank you. The second agenda item is the Finance Committee report. The Finance Committee Chairman is sitting across from me, and Mr. Rumsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We finance met yesterday in New York City with some folks up in Albany. We first adopted the meeting minutes from the April meeting of the Finance Committee. We then advanced and discussed the one of the offerings that's on today's agenda, which is the pit sales tax offering. And after a significant amount of discussion, we unanimously agreed, you and I, that we would recommend that be approved at today's full board meeting. Unless anyone has any questions or any concerns, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Janice is on. We missed you yesterday. We're glad you could join us today.
Thank you very much, Al. Thank you.
Let's see. So we go to tab 3, the Columbia University material. It was to have been presented. I'm sorry. Ruben, would you take it away?
Mr. Chairman, good to see everybody this morning. Hope all is well on this beautiful spring day. Behind tab 3, as you mentioned, we do have a transaction summary for Columbia University. We have Alex Sardine who's presenting for Dave Ostrander. Dave Ostrander and Matt Bergen today are attending the pricing for our big school bond transaction. So they will not be with us. So Alex and Portia will be in their place today. We also have here from outside counsel, Virginia Wong of Nixon Peabody and Vivian Drohan of Drohan Unique presenting. So Alex, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. At the April 12th board meeting, the members adopted a resolution to proceed for one or more series of bonds in an amount not to exceed $325 million on behalf of Columbia University. Since that time, we have received, the secret process have been completed. We have held the temporary hearing and we have received PSCB approval. Other than that, there have been no changing to this financing described to the members at the April meeting. Staff is recommending that the board adopt the necessary documents for this transaction. Unless there are any questions, I will turn it over to Vivian and Virginia for an overview of the transaction.
Okay, this is Vivian Drohan. Before you for consideration is the adoption of 2 series resolutions authorizing individually and in the aggregate 325 million of DASNY's Columbia University revenue bonds. The authorized bonds are proposed to be issued under DASNY's amended and restated Columbia University Revenue Bond Resolution, originally adopted in September 2000, and the series resolutions. The proceeds of the authorized bonds are expected to be used to 1, finance or refinance capital expenditures at various university facilities, 2, provide for the payment of outstanding commercial paper notes previously issued by the university to refund the authority's Columbia University revenue bonds, series 2011A, and 3, pay the cost of issuance of the authorized bonds. In order to provide flexibility for the university with respect to structure and timing, you are being asked to authorize the issuance of 2 series of tax-exempt and taxable bonds, or a combination thereof, which may be issued at 1 or more times. The current expectation is that the authorized bonds will be issued as tax-exempt, unenhanced, fixed-rate bonds in a single series. The series resolutions, however, do not limit the discretion of DASNY's officers to determine to issue the authorized bonds in other configurations that are currently contemplated. The authorized bonds may be issued pursuant to public offering and/or private placement. Any publicly offered bonds would be sold in a negotiated sale to Goldman Sachs. If any authorized bonds are sold pursuant to a private placement, Goldman Sachs would be the placement agent.
The general resolution provides for the issuance from time to time of multiple series of bonds, which are those bonds are special obligations of DASNY payable solely out of the revenues, which consist of payments made by the university under the loan agreement. The university's obligations under the loan agreement, which was originally executed by the authority and the university in September 2000, and was amended in 2011, amended and restated in 2011, are general obligations of the university. In 2020, this board authorized additional amendments to the loan agreement, which amendments require the consent of a majority of bondholders. The purchasers of the authorized bonds will consent to the amendments by virtue of their purchase. However, the amendments will not become effective upon the issuance of these authorized bonds. The loan agreement requires the university to make payments in amounts and at times sufficient to make timely payment of the principal and sinking fund installments of and interest on all bonds outstanding under the general resolution, including the authorized bonds. The university's obligations under the loan agreement are not secured by any pledge of revenues or mortgages or security interests in any property of the university. The series resolutions delegate to various officers of DASNY the power to make the determinations described in our letter and to do all things necessary or convenient in connection with the sale of the authorized bonds. In addition, the university will enter into an agreement to provide continuing disclosure in connection with the issuance of any publicly offered authorized bonds. That concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Virginia. First, let me thank Alex and Vivian and yourself for being with us today. It's good to be back together, even if it's virtual. It's good to have you. Are there any questions for Alex, Vivian, or Virginia? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction? There is a resolution, I think, that well, maybe there isn't. Maybe I just misunderstood that. But the transaction has to be approved. May I have a motion, please, to approve it? Wellington, thank you. Is there a second? Jerry, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. The transaction is approved unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind tab 4, we have a transaction summary for the interagency council transaction. Alex Sardine is going to present this as well. We have Melissa Bennett of Barclay Damon and Karen Kendrick of Wilson Monday as legal counsel presenting on this transaction. Alex, take
Thanks
it
again,
away one
Mr.
more
President,
time.
and good morning again, everybody.
Thanks.
Transaction summary update provided to the members requests the adoption of documents for the Interagency Council of Developmental Disabilities. This transaction was brought to the board for resolution to proceed at the March 1st board meeting. The original pool of participants presented to the board at the resolution to proceed included 7 participants and 17 projects. Since then, Hardshier Human Services of New York has added 2 additional projects. There are now 7 participants with 19 projects being financed, all of which have PPAs. We have secured PSCB authorization. The secret process has been completed and the PEPR hearing has been held. I will now turn it over to co-bond counsel for a description of the documents associated with this transaction. Alyssa?
Thanks, Alex, and good morning, everyone. Before the board for consideration is a proposed IAC series resolution authorizing up to $28 million of bonds under the IAC general resolution. That resolution authorizes DASNY to issue multiple series of bonds for the nonprofit members of IAC to finance facilities serving people with developmental and other disabilities. DASNY loans the proceeds to 1 or more IAC members with a separate loan agreement for each participant. Each series of IAC bonds is separately secured by the payments to be made by the participants under their respective loan agreements. IAC members receive most of their funding through state agencies, and each member in its loan agreement grants DASNY a security interest in such public funds relating to the facilities financed.
Good morning. Unfortunately, I don't believe my camera is working this morning, but it's good to be with you. So as Alex noted, the proposed bonds will finance approximately 19 project facilities for 7 participants, consisting of 9 IAC members. Each project facility is run by an IAC member licensed by 1 or more state agencies, including OPWDD for all projects. Bond proceeds will also fund a debt service reserve fund and cost of issuance. The bonds will be special obligations of DASNY payable solely from the revenues pledged to the bonds, which are primarily payments made under the applicable loan agreements.
Each project is required to have a prior property approval or PPA, and as Alex noted, each project has received such PPA. And that evidences OPWDD's commitment to pay an amount approximately sufficient to amortize the project's portion of the bonds, subject to state appropriation and operation of the project to state standards. These payments will constitute pledged revenues. Any non-OPWDD reimbursed amounts are anticipated to be paid out of operating revenues. As additional security, DASNY will enter into intercept agreements so that if a participant defaults, OPWDD will make payments as DASNY directs. The participants' loans are also expected to be secured by mortgages, except that for one participant, it will not mortgage one of its facilities, and except that for 2 leased facilities and for 1 manufactured home facility that is subject to a ground lease, those applicable participants are expected to instead collaterally assign their respective leasehold interest to DASNY.
The bonds will be separately secured from all other series by the loans to the participants. These loans are not cross-collateralized with or cross-defaulted to any other loans. If a participant defaults on a loan, the default will not constitute a default under the loans made to the other participants. The series resolution also authorizes customary documents for a negotiated public offering of bonds. Are there any questions at this point?
Again, I want to thank all 3 of you. Alex, thank you. Melissa and Karen, thank you for being with us. Are there any questions for this group of folks? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction? Wellington, thank you. Is there a second? Beryl, thank you. Second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is the transaction is approved. Approved unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Melissa. Behind tab 5 is the Pitt Sales Tax Revenue Bond Program Single Approval Transaction Summary. As I mentioned earlier, Matt Bergen is working on the school pool transaction this morning. So Portia Lee will be presenting for DASNY. Fritz Reitzel of Nixon Peabody, Sonny Williams, and Seth Bryant of Bryant Rubino are all with us to present today.
Great, thank you, Ruben. So the board is being asked to authorize the issuance of multiple series of tax exempt and or taxable fixed and or variable rate bonds issued at one or more times in an amount not to exceed $4.5 billion. The new money bonds may be issued with a term of up to 30 years, provided, however, that the bonds issued to finance the MTA projects may be issued for a term up to 50 years as authorized in the fiscal 2024 enacted budget. And all of those limitations obviously are subject to tax council review. The state would like the flexibility to issue the proposed bonds under either the personal income tax program or the sales tax program. And the current plan is to have two financings. This authorization is for new money, refunding, and a tender. The new money portion is estimated to be approximately $2.1 billion, where the majority of the funds are to reimburse the state for monies that they have previously expended. There is some prospective funding as well. The authorization also looks to cover a refunding as well as a tender of certain bonds issued under various state-supported debt programs. Both the refunding and the tender are being undertaken to provide debt service savings to the state as well. The refunding is expected to be in the amount of approximately $1.3 billion. On the tender, although we expect to identify approximately $1.1 billion in bonds, the amount of investor participation in the tender is currently unknown at this time. The new money projects include a host of various programs, most of which you've seen before. The Department of Corrections and Community Supervision, economic development programs and grants, various economic development initiatives, environmental initiatives, healthcare grants, Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Office of Information Technology, libraries, SED, MTA, the New York Power Authority, OGS, OMH, OPWDD, OASIS, SUNY, and state and municipal grants. So of the $2.1 billion new money that I just mentioned, the only piece that is prospective funding is for the MTA projects. The rest, as I mentioned earlier, is reimbursement. And Mr. Chairman, before I go on to note some other details, I did want to also note that we are rescinding the $2.75 billion authorization that we got back in the fall. We thought that that made sense given the fact that we didn't want there to be any confusion that we might be issuing bonds under that authorization as well as this authorization, because that was 2.75, this is 4.5. We didn't want there to be any question in terms of the amount that we're actually authorized to issue, which is 4.5 billion. So that's the reason why we have rescinded and are seeking to rescind that fall authorization. Just as far as other things that I wanted to note about these bonds, the personal income tax program on the security side, as you well know, security includes 50% of receipts from the personal income tax, 50% of the employer compensation expense tax, and 50% of the receipts from the tax, all of which are deposited in the revenue bond tax fund. For the sales tax revenue bond program, the security includes a set aside of 2 cents out of the state's 4% sales tax pursuant to statute and deposited in the sales tax revenue bond program fund. On the debt service coverage side, for the year ending March 31st, 2024, debt service coverage is expected to be 7.1 times for PIT, 8.2 times for sales tax. And again, the ratings, as you've seen in the past, are expected to be under either of the programs AA1, AA+, and AA+. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Portia. Chris and Sonny, you're both there.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with Sonny and Seth and all of you. Before you for consideration is the adoption of two supplemental resolutions. One under the Personal Income Tax Revenue Bond Program, the other the State Sales Tax Revenue Bond Program. Each supplemental resolution authorizes individually and together the issuance of up to $4.5 billion of authorized bonds, meaning that in no event will more than $4.5 billion of authorized bonds be issued under the supplemental resolutions before you today. In addition, just to reinforce something that Portia just highlighted, for the avoidance of doubt going forward, the supplemental resolutions before you rescind those November resolutions, meaning, among other things, that no bonds can be issued under that prior authorization. In order to provide maximum flexibility to the state, we are authorizing issuances under both programs. As described in our letter, the authorized bonds may be issued for any authorized purpose and are expected to pay for the projects described in our letter and to refund certain outstanding state-supported bonds. In addition, authorized bonds may be issued to fund the purchase and cancellation of certain outstanding bonds, which are invited to be tendered by bondholders. Each supplemental resolution permits authorized bonds to be issued in one or more series or subseries at one or more times and to be sold on a negotiated or competitive basis. In addition, all or a portion of the authorized bonds may be issued as tax exempt and or federally taxable bonds. Each supplemental resolution provides for an authorized officer the authority to execute and deliver supplements to the related financing agreement for each program to reflect any additional issuance under that program and to execute any documents required by the tender process. Lastly, each supplemental resolution delegates to various officers the power to make the determinations described in our letter and to do all things necessary or convenient in connection with the sale and issuance of the authorized bonds. At this point, turn it over to Sonny to discuss the two programs in greater detail.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with everyone again. Going to give a overview of both the PIT and sales tax programs. With regard to the PIT program, Article 5C of the state finance law authorizes the authority and certain other authorized issuers to issue PIT bonds for any authorized purpose. All PIT bonds issued under the general purpose PIT bond resolution are special obligations of the authority secured by payments to be received by the authority under the PIT financing agreement with DOB. The PIT financing agreement obligates the state to pay debt service on outstanding PIT bonds, notes, and other obligations. Those payments are made from amounts available in the Revenue Bond Tax Fund established by state finance law and are subject to annual appropriation. The Revenue Bond Tax Fund receives statutorily allocated portions of the state's personal income tax receipts, the employer compensation expense program receipts, and the pass-through entity tax receipts. With regards to the sales tax program, Article 5F of the New York State Finance Law authorizes the authority and certain other authorized issuers to issue sales tax bonds for any of the purposes for which state-supported debt may or has been issued. All sales tax bonds issued under the sales tax bond resolution are special obligations of the authority secured by payments to be received by the authority under the sales tax financing agreement with DOB. The sales tax financing agreement obligates the state to pay debt service on all outstanding sales tax bonds that are issued under the sales tax bond resolution. Those payments are made from amounts available in the sales tax revenue bond tax fund established by the state finance law, and they are also subject to appropriation. The sales tax revenue bond tax fund receives a statutorily allocated percentage of the revenues collected from the state's sales and compensating use taxes. That completes our presentation, but we're happy to answer any questions from the board. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sonny. And Seth, I know you're there. I guess Sonny made your work easy today. Is that right?
He always does, Mr. Chairman. And I think when you referenced me earlier, I wasn't fast enough to get to the unmute button. So, but thank you. It's great to see you personally. Great to see the board, and to hear the presentation.
Thank
We
you all
like to
very
look-
much for the presentation.
We like to look at ourselves, Mr. Chairman, as Batman and Batman.
Portia, Chris, Sonny, thank you very much. Are there questions for this group on the transaction? Hearing none, then may I have a motion to approve it? Wellington, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry, who was that?
Adrian.
Thank you very much. Just for the record, I needed to make sure that everybody knew who did the second of the motion. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, this transaction is approved and it's approved unanimously. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Sarah, is it at this point that we want to go into the executive session?
Yeah, yes, it is. We'll need a chair to do, a motion to do that, Mr. Chair.
I got it.
All managing
I got it.
directors. Yep.
I got it. May I have a motion, please, to enter an executive session, a closed session, to discuss the financial and credit history of a particular corporation, matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, supervision, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and proposed pending or current litigation. May I have that motion, please? Thank you, Wellington. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joan. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then we are now in executive session. Are we on? The record will reflect that we've just left an executive session during which no decisions were made other than to return to the public session. We're going to take one of the remaining agenda items out of sequence, and Steve Currow is going to give us the construction.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Just a couple of quick statistics coming out from this past month. We did add 3 new projects at Queens College, York College, and Suffolk County, raise the age, totaling 110 million. Our expenditures as the year closed out, March 22 were 506 million, March 23, 624 million. So we had a net gain of about 118 million year over year in construction expenditures. Our SUNY summer work is about to launch for projects at Albany, Alfred, Buffalo, Delhi, Geneseo, New Paltz, Oneonta, and Purchase, to name a few. The total construction value is approximately 34 million. So 23 projects at 34 million. We're also getting requests in at this time for next year's summer activity as well. On the DOH Life Sciences front, the total appropriation is now in place, 1.7 billion. Our design build team continues to work on the program associated with the consolidation of the 5 Albany-based decentralized lab locations. We expect that deliverable before the end of this month. Just a quick update on West Point, the military academy, our Cullum Road retaining wall structure project is finishing up, and we are moving into final design on the police barracks slate roof replacement project. Just a couple of other administrative items. We have now over 50 open positions in the construction division. That includes recruiting for 10 student interns this summer. We are conducting those interviews now, and we hope to have those interns in place by June 1.
Good luck. That's a great project.
Yeah, and on top of that, I'm working with HR to see that our interns, those appropriate, receive offers from DASNY for permanent work following their spring 2024 graduation.
That's terrific. If I were to ask you, Steve, I assume you crew for this, how much money is represented in the jobs that we're having difficulty filling? That is salaries. What would it cost us?
Gosh. Well, if I took the 50 open positions and assumed 75K salary.
Okay.
I can't do that math in my head, but that's what it is.
But the 50 included the 10 interns.
It does.
Okay.
It does. So really 40 times.
Got it.
Just a couple of other quick items. There was a SUNY physical plant administrators summer conference set for mid-July. DASNY will attend that. Also, there's 3 PLAs that we're working on that will come before the board. They're for projects at Mid-Hudson's Forensic Hospital, new build, Hutchings Psych Center and Rochester Psych Center. The dates will be coordinated with the board as they come due. So kind of a condensed construction division report, but if anyone has any questions, I'll take.
I don't have any more. Thank you.
Hey,
All right.
Steve.
Yes, sir.
You comment on the successful student housing seminar we hosted a couple weeks ago?
Absolutely. A couple of DASNY staffers were part of organizing a panel of 3 external consultants that we work with very closely. And the topic was really trends in residence hall construction. And, you know, I look around the table and everybody here remembers the dorms that they lived in. They weren't called residence halls, they were called dorms. But today's construction and design is very different. You know, there's, you know, small fitness centers that are part of student living. There's cafes, there's classrooms. We had a very good discussion with, like I said, 3 of our current term consultants, and they brought about an audience of around 200 up to speed on really what the market looks like today from a design and construction perspective. And that market is really being driven by the students themselves and what, you know, amenities they are looking for.
Really like the student
life.
housing arena, right, outside of New York, really, but the student housing arena has its own sort of, you know, it's a very competitive arena, and so you probably get a lot of the ideas from like the private student housing sector. I would think they do, you know, what the kids like, what the students like, and what they're expecting.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of that going on, and there were some privates that were part of this gathering. You know, I'm told, you know, kids look at 2 things today when they go to a college to visit. They look at the
Where the
dorms.
dispensary is? No.
No. They look at the dorms and they look at the you know, the cafeteria.
Student centers.
That's it. You know, because calculus at RPI is the same as calculus at, you know, URI. So anyway, I hope you know, our guys, Joanna Yackel and Sal Renda did a great job of monitoring the discussion, and I think overall it went pretty well.
And I watched the program, it really was excellent. Well done. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going back now to the regular agenda. The next report is the governance committee report. Chairman Snyder.
Yesterday afternoon, the governance committee also met. And behind tab 2, you will see an agenda. It's also on page 69 if you're going through your book. The first matter was the approval of the minutes from the April meeting. We then discussed a resolution to the recommendation of a resolution authorizing raises of staff officers and management and confidential employees in accordance with the promulgated budget bulletins from DOB. The New York State Division of Budget issued bulletins D 1142, D 1144, and D 1146, authorizing payment to the management confidential employees of 2% general salary increases retroactive to April 1, 2020, and performance advances or longevity payment awards for fiscal years 21, 22, and 23. There is a resolution on page 79, which is about 10 pages in from tab 6, which itemizes what the governance committee reviewed and is recommending that the board approve. It will help bring the salaries of DASNY's management team more in line with those of other state employees. Chair, would you present the resolution authorizing the implementation salary actions for staff officers and executive staff classified at the staff officer level?
Well, I'll present it in an abbreviated fashion, unless there are questions for you or Paul. Hearing none, it's a very simple resolution authorizing the president to implement, et cetera, the described salary actions for staff employees and executive staff. It will take effect immediately. It's in your materials. Are there any questions about the resolution? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve it? So, Wellington, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Joan, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? It would be dangerous to oppose this resolution. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. The resolution is approved unanimously. We then move on to the president's report. Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Board, thank you very much. We've had a good month at DASNY. I wanted to highlight, although Nairobi will be giving a fulsome report, some of the diversity activities we had last month as part of our Celebration of Diversity Month. It's been 3 years or so since we created an Office of Diversity at DASNY. And that office has done a great job on working on diversity issues around recruitment, making sure that our job descriptions didn't discriminate, making sure that in our interview process, that diversity is a component of that process. We've also worked very hard on staff enlightenment, information, and education about what diversity inclusion means, what it looks like, and how we should comport ourselves in a way to make DASNY a more inclusive workforce. And Nairobi and her team have done a wonderful job with that. We've also had some fun. We've had several activities. We had a big game show the other day. It was a lot of fun that people participated in. And I want you all to mark your calendars for the afternoon of June 23rd. We're gonna have an international food festival outside between 3 and 5 across the highway at the park. And so you'll get formal invitations, but you'll put on your calendar. It's always a nice time to get the staff together, and we'll have some food vendors and some music, and Jeff Gordon will do the electric slide. I'll bring that. I'll give you some updates. Second, we've been talking about the state budget. It did pass and was signed. Nadine, you want to give a quick update on the budget and how we got impacted by it?
Certainly, we did submit at least, we had four or five proposals that we submitted that not all were able to advance. We were able to get an extender on the MWBE pilot program, which is our set aside program for another 5 years. And we were also able to get a 2-year extension on our authorization to perform provide design build services to parks and BEC. So that those two were able to move forward. We were unable to advance our proposal to provide services to municipalities and localities for the DRI New York Forward proposal, but we will renew our efforts to get that again next year. And also we sought to increase the MIFTA bond cap. That was also not successful, but only because it was they didn't want to consider it in the context of the budget. So we will continue to pursue that outside of the budget. And we also had reappropriations for our not-for-profit infrastructure capital access program. Nice. There's a lot of acronyms in the I kind of lost that one. And LOCAP, as well as CREST and SAM. Those are our 3 grant programs, which were reappropriated, re-upped for continuation of those programs.
And I think bigger picture, I think that this budget, although a bit tardy, was really a good budget for New York. The governor seems very happy. The legislature seems happy. a lot of great new initiatives. Mental health was a big focus of this budget, and I think it's important. Some work was done on bail reform, of course. And I really think that from an overall state perspective, coming out of pandemics a few years ago, kind of hand wringing that was done with the budget, a lot of those things are being made up now, and the capital programs are interesting. We all talk about the lab program that got additional capital budget. That'll be a big DASNY program. So we're very excited about what came out of this budget. And again, the proverbial body language of all parties is tough negotiations, good budget. But, so we're really pleased with that.
How much did they up the grant, the lab to, Ruben? Do you know? Was over $1 billion now?
Oh, yes, over $1 billion. Probably, I think it's about 1.8, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the 1.8 billion range is the number.
It's an important, part of a important project for New York State, that project.
It's interesting, someone asked earlier about MTA bonds going out 50 years and bonds going out 30 years. Some of the old lab facilities were funded with DASNY bonds that are maturing this year.
Yep.
So a lot of these old facilities were built 30 years ago. And I had a chance to tour with Catherine Garcia and others, our current state labs. And just with the technology now, there's outdated. So you can really see it in the physical space when you walk through it. A lot of equipment is much bigger now and in different configurations. So this will be great for the state. But as you know, we are one of the leaders in lab services throughout the country. And during the pandemic, our lab service really relied on a lot of that nationally, not just in the state. So very big for the state, very good for DASNY as well. And then finally, my report, we have been working on the Governor's Office Storm Recovery Program ever since Storm Sandy. That funded a lot of the revitalization and infrastructure improvements on the eastern seaboard to try to avoid some of the flooding that happened. DASNY participated in 60 plus projects. Some of those were fairly high profile, some of them lower profile, but all important to the neighborhoods. I had a chance to go to some of the ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings. The neighborhoods were very appreciative of the work the state committed to Gozer, to those projects. Our team did a wonderful job of making sure that those projects were done appropriately. And a few outstanding projects are being moved over to the Office of Resiliency, Resilient Homes and Communities, RHC. I just want to highlight, one of our really stars at DASNY, Kate Sealy-Kirk, led that program for us over the last 7 or 8 years and just did a fantastic job of coordinating with all the federal and state participants, the local governments, and then all of the DASNY employees. So Kate did a wonderful job on organizing the Gozer, and she'll close that down over the next couple of months, and we'll move on to other projects. So very successful. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Are there questions for Ruben? Then we will move now to agenda item 8, which is the finance report. Kimberly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Monthly financial report included in your materials represents preliminary numbers for our fiscal year end of March. Staff are still booking entries and allocating expenses and accruals. So the more detailed information will be included with our financial statements that will be presented at the June meeting. Just a quick update on where we are with the audit. Our audit weekly status meetings began this week with KPMG. It's still a little bit early in the process, but we thought it'd be helpful to begin the meetings a little earlier, given the number of GASB pronouncements we're implementing this year. They did notify us that the firm they partnered with, one of the firms they partnered with, Dallas Vignola, was unable to provide staffing to support this year's engagement, so they will not be part of the engagement this year. They do still have Long Island Financial Management, who will continue to support the engagement. And additionally, we'll have support from our internal audit team to complete the engagement for this fiscal year. Last thing I have is a budget amendment, which you should have included in your materials, which we are requesting to amend the 23-24 operating budget that was approved in March. This amendment is to support the implementation of salary increases for the MC staff as outlined in the resolution that was approved earlier in the meeting, and to allow for anticipated salary actions. If there are any questions, I leave it to you, Chair, to present the resolution.
Thank you, Kimberly. Are there questions for Kim? The resolution is a very simple one. That the members of the board have proposed an amended DASNY operating budget. The amount of that proposal, that amendment as proposed, is in the resolution. It's a sentence, and if you haven't seen it, you can read it very quickly. I'll assume everybody has. May I have a motion, please, to approve it?
So moved.
Thank you. Who knows that? Oh, I know. Thank you very much. And is there a second?
Second.
Let Joan do it. Thank you, Joan. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved and it's approved unanimously today. Thank you very much, Kim.
Thank you.
We move on now to the next agenda item, which is Portia Lee's report.
Mr. Chairman, included in the members' materials are the standard public finance reports. I'd like to address first the information and materials in connection with the TELP program and authorization. So included in the members' materials is a memo as well as 2 resolutions regarding the TELP authorization process. We talked about this a couple of months ago in concept. As you will recall, the board is currently authorized and required to authorize TELP transactions that are $10 million or more in size, or that total $10 million or more in a 12-month period for an individual borrower, subject to certain annual aggregate authorization caps. The annual authorization cap for healthcare is $500 million. The annual authorization cap for higher education and other not-for-profits is $200 million. Staff recommends that the $10 million threshold and the annual authorization caps be eliminated. We're recommending that the board consider all TELP transactions regardless of size. This would be consistent with our treatment of bond transactions. This would ensure that the board would have the opportunity to review all TELP transactions, including small ones that may have unusual features. In addition, it would also relieve staff of the administrative work of tracking and monitoring the thresholds and caps. It would also simplify the bond counsel review and diligence associated with ensuring valid authorization. The annual authorization caps would no longer be needed to the extent that we'd be bringing all TELP transactions to the board for consideration. Happy to answer any questions. And if not, there are resolutions for the board.
Resolutions are behind Portia's report. There are 2. The one first rescinds the prior resolution of 1997, which set TELP caps, required TELP maximum numbers, after which the board would have to consider those transactions. The new resolution, and we're going to vote them separately, the proposed resolution would eliminate those caps and have the board review all TELP transactions going forward. Are there any questions about the resolutions?
Yeah, just a clarification.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman. Portia, what was the intent of the original 1997 limit?
I think the intent was to say, we're going to just process the TELP transactions in an effort to promote speed and certainty in the program. And so basically we'll take care of the small ones up to a certain aggregate limitation. And then we will bring to the board the big transactions so that, you're sort of aware of the, anything of real size. I think what we've seen through the years is that the board authorization has not in any way slowed down the administration of those TELP transactions. Folks are coming in, transactions get processed, the board approval, is not any kind of real impediment from a time perspective. So we did think that it made sense for the board to consider all TELP transactions regardless of size. And that in doing so, that really then obviated the need to have some sort of aggregate limitation for the amount of TELP transactions considered in any given year.
Thank you. Portia, thank you. I think it makes sense to consider the resolutions in the reverse order in which they're presented. We should rescind the 1997 resolution and then pass the 2013 resolution. Does the board agree with that? Sure. Okay, then taking the last one first, may I have a motion, please, to approve that decision to rescind? So moved.
Second.
I think I can't do it. I think you have to, and then Merrill takes gets the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. The resolution is adopted unanimously. Second resolution that Bush's group presents is the resolution which requires now that the board review all TELP transactions regardless of their amounts. Seems reasonable to me, but let's see what the board says. May I have a motion, please, to approve it? So moved. Okay. Thank you, Jerry. A second? Did you?
I can second.
Okay, thank you very much. Robert. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. I don't know that there are any opposed. I don't think that there are any abstentions. Motion carries. The resolutions are both adopted unanimously. Give me my books coming.
Thank you.
Sorry?
Oh, I just said, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a few other small updates for the board.
Well, I'm sorry, Portia, please forgive me.
Oh, quite all right. I thought we should get the business taken care of first. One is since the last board meeting, we closed the St. John's Episcopal Energy TELP. So congratulations to all who worked on that transaction. Very big accomplishment. Jerry, you had asked when we were looking at this originally, when the board originally considered this transaction, just to get an update on the equipment that was being financed. So I just wanted to come back to you on that. There was new LED lighting, certain central plant equipment, so steam to hot water conversion, new absorption chiller, and domestic hot water. In addition, there were certain HVAC equipment items, air handling units, fan coil units, automation. There was electric high energy transformers and domestic water equipment like faucets and toilets, things that are basically water conservation measures. So just wanted to come back to you on that, just to close the loop.
Thank you.
Just a very, of course. Brief market update, total year-to-date long-term new issuance supply for 2023 is approximately $114 billion, down about 23.3% from last year's comparable volume. This week's supply is expected to be in line with recent averages at about 7.5 billion. Tax-exempt yields were unchanged yesterday, with the 10-year AAA MMD remaining at 2.31% and the 30-year remaining at 3.36%. U.S. government bond yields were slightly higher yesterday, with the 10-year Treasury yield increasing by 1 basis point to 3.53% and the 30-year increasing by 1 basis point to 3.85%. Municipal bond funds reported outflows of $846 million for the week ending May 3rd, after prior week outflows as well. Since the May 12th board meeting, the 1-year MMD has increased by 61 basis points. The 10-year had increased by 21 basis points, and the 30-year had increased by 18 basis points. During that same time period, the 10-year Treasury increased by 10 basis points, and the 30-year increased by 23 basis points. As you all know, the Fed did increase rates by 25 basis points at its earlier May meeting. The only other thing I wanted to bring to the board's attention, is included in the materials, is a bond sale summary for St. John's University, which includes performance metrics. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Portia. Questions for Portia? Since we've already acted on our resolutions, we can go to the next report. It's the General Counsel's report. And thank you very much, Nadine, for the board's information and for the record. Nadine has provided comprehensive information in support of the resolution which is being proposed. Very important resolution for DASNY. The board has carefully considered her resolution and has made the decision not to act on it today, but rather to act on it at a special meeting that will be held next Tuesday. I don't know the date, at 9 o'clock in the morning. Are there questions about my comment?
It's at 11, Mr. Chair. That was the time the members were available on Tuesday.
Did I say 9? Oh, I'm so sorry. It's at 11 o'clock. I stand corrected.
It's May 16th.
It's May 16th. So the meeting is at May 16th, the DASNY offices at 11 o'clock in the morning. And we need to have as many of the board members present as possible. It's a special meeting and will not take 20 minutes. All right. Is there any other business then to come before this board?
Yes, as part of the general counsel's report.
Yes, forgive me.
Diversity and inclusion also reports to council's office. Nairobi Vivas is here to provide a report on the current status of the work that the department has been performing to date. Ruben indicated earlier in his presentation as well.
And Nadine, thank you for helping me to know that Nairobi pronounces her last name as Vivas.
Yes. I was telling Sarah, I get vibes a lot. I'm used to it. So.
I'm not going to make that mistake. Thank you.
Good vibes, I like that. Well, good morning. Thank you, Nadine, for that introduction, and Mr. President, thank you as well. I'm very happy to be here this morning to share with you the progress of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Since the last time I presented to you all in January of 22, we have accomplished a lot. And our president also gave a little bit of background. I will just add that in 2018, with Executive Order 187, the Civil Service Department did create the Office of Diversity and Inclusion Management, which requires each state entity to have a diversity inclusion liaison, which would be myself, for DASNY, the Director of Diversity and Inclusion, and also had each entity complete some reports which led to recommendations from ODM. So from there, we were tasked with creating a 5-year strategic plan, and we have accomplished many of the initiatives in implementing the recommendations from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion Management. So our ultimate goal, as you can see here in our mission statement, is to create a workplace where our staff is valued, respected, and included. And we utilize those principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion to further our mission to finance, design, and build New York's future. The benefits of diversity and inclusion are well established at this point and clear to many. A more diverse and inclusive workplace leads to more engaged employees, increased innovation, and ultimately for superior solutions for our clients. And as our president also alluded to last month, we did celebrate Diversity Month for the first time. We shared the importance of diversity and inclusion with our staff by recognizing this month, and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion worked together with communications and marketing to create an internal and external campaign to explain to staff how we all work together and how diversity is an organization-wide accomplishment. So here you see some of the social media posts that Brittany Stenson, one of the newest members of communications and marketing, put together for us and that we shared in our social media. And here is the team inclusive of diversity and inclusion, communications, marketing, and human resources. We were able to create a new logo with the help of John Quinlan and Brittany Stinson of CNM. We shared daily quotes to spark thoughts. We had staff giveaways, which I believe all of you received our reusable tote that we
nice.
gave.
Very nice.
And I believe you all got our cookie as well with our new DNI logo on it. So we were happy to share that. We also hosted regional potlucks. We started here in Albany, and we will be doing the same in the Buffalo, Rochester, and New York City offices. We invited staff to prepare cultural and family recipes and also share those recipes to be compiled in a DASNY cookbook by CNM. And as Ruben also talked about, he was so kind to host our first virtual fun fact game show. And our very own Chief of Staff, Sarah Richards, was on the winning team. Amanda Nazario is probably demanding a recount right now. You're number 3 outside my. But here's some of the things that we put out for staff. Our game show, we had a banner downstairs in the Albany office, just letting people know what Celebrate Diversity Month was, and sharing and highlighting our new logo so that we can all be mindful of this joint task that we have. So progress on our diversity and inclusion initiatives. My office is tasked with creating and implementing a strategic vision for diversity and inclusion here at DASNY, and all of the many other components that make it possible. So we investigate complaints of discrimination or harassment. We do anti-discrimination training and so much more. And here are some of our achievements to date. We have completed our 5-year strategic plan. We've engaged the McLean Group, which is a DEI consultant, to help us assess where we are and move forward in implementing our strategic plan. We've revamped the recruitment process along with HR. We work very closely. Our staff attends most of the interviews that we have here. We do pre and post recruitment meetings to give hiring managers the direction that they need to make sure they're making unbiased decisions and bringing diversity into the organization. We have diversified our talent pipeline. We have attended a wide range of job fairs in conjunction with the HR team to bring in new and diverse talent to DASNY. And we recently conducted a training to hiring managers on the do's and don'ts of recruitment with outside counsel, which was very well received and has had a great effect on our recruitment process. We've focused on employee engagement with lots of events, and as our president alluded to, we are going to have our 2nd annual International Food Fest, which we hope all of you can join us for. It was a lot of fun. There was actual electric slide dancing, and we hope to have more this year, more fun, more games, more singing. And we are utilizing technology to increase the efficacy and sustainability of our D&I program. So we are building a new database with our IS team to track employee complaints, and also to use data to make sure that the initiatives that we are implementing are effective and sustainable. And finally, we have implemented a D&I employee recognition program, which was part of the recommendations from ODM. We recognized 4 staff members, Karen Hunter, Peter Jackson, Kimberly Smith, and Rob Ryan, for their efforts. And they will be doing a video coming up this month with Ruben and myself to talk about their efforts and how they are adding to our diverse and inclusive workplace. So we have made significant progress, as you can see, and where we are now, we are continuing to work our 5-year strategic plan, and we are working with our D&I consultant. We are in the assessment phase of the process where they are meeting with our senior leadership. They're going to meet with staff DASNY-wide through focus groups and staff surveys, and help us to understand the culture that we have and any improvements that we need to make. And the next steps that we take include implementing our consultant recommendations, utilizing demographic data to assess progress, creating employee resource groups, introducing a diversity council, providing additional training, and increasing our diversity fellowship and internship opportunities. I just want to end by saying thank you to all of your support, and thank you for senior leadership here. This job is not easy, and I hear from other people in the same role that they don't have the same amount of support that I get here, but D&I has been given the resources, the support, the time that we need to do the work that we have here. And I think that our staff is really feeling the results of those efforts. So thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Ms. Vivas, thank you. It's Al Carney. A couple of things. First of all, where is the consultant located physically?
She is in the Capital District. I think her offices are in Latham.
Okay, I'm not sure I know where that is, but I hear you. Thank you.
So just outside of Albany.
Okay, and if you were gonna give us a grade, now that you've been here for a while and you've met a lot of the DASNY folk and you have a sense of what we're good at and what we're not good at, and you're gonna grade us from A to F, what would you give us?
I think that we are at a solid B+ and on our way to an A. I had some extensive talks with our consultant after she met with our senior leaders, and she was very impressed by everyone having such a great sense of what diversity and inclusion means and the benefits are. The only reason I say B+ is that we have to make sure that that top down is reaching all levels of our staff. So it's we are working hard, and I think everyone gets it. I'm getting a lot of feedback on how people feel like things are changing for the better, and how they're excited about things that are coming along. So I think that getting us over that hump to an A and an A+ is my hill to climb, and I'm taking on that task and up for the challenge.
We're gonna hold you to it.
Sure you will.
I want to congratulate Jeffrey Gordon, who managed to get his face on your cover sheet. Thank you very much.
Especially John Quinlan and Brittany, they've been great, so they deserve top billing.
Thank you. Well, it's noonish. Now, is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion please to adjourn? So moved. Thank you very much, Wellington. Is there a second? Second. Jerry, thank you for the second. We're just going to assume that I don't have to say anymore. We're out of here.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. See you Tuesday.